What's up, you latelys?
One of the things that sucks is for the cool things that are happening in America, you can't even take credit for it anymore.
Oh, we going in hard on this one. We got Amala vs. Destiny. Let's go. Let's go. Just kidding. They mostly agree the whole time. But we're going to bash them anyway. So stick around to the end to see who I think won. Before I got started doing all kinds of internet drama and reacting to Fish Tank and all the degeneracy that takes place on the internet, I got my simple start just reacting to videos on YouTube, specifically Jubilee videos, because nothing, and I mean nothing, gets me fired up like owning the libs. Can I get a hell yeah? What? So today I thought I'd get back to my roots of reacting to Jubilee videos. This one particularly caught my eye because it has Amala and Destiny in it, who are two very influential political figures on social media. I always kind of craft it myself after Amala's show because I just think that that girl's beast.
Am I optimistic that that is going to be the case? Honestly, guys, I'm not the most optimistic.
And Destiny's okay too.
But I've never in my life heard these guys talk about, like, how do you get in a relationship?
I mean, he's been wrapped up in a lot of drama lately, but you know what? That's what happens when you let people snag your wife. All I'm saying, all right? I wouldn't personally let anybody do that, but hey, you know, to each his own. So with that said, let's get into this episode of Jubilee. Liberals and conservatives are really not that different. Psych! Can we bring back the word psych, please? That was so good when I was younger. Right off the bat here, I just want to say, why don't they just line them up shortest to tallest? I think that'd be cool, because then you can slowly see everybody just get a little taller. I mean, I don't know. That's just me personally.
The far left and the far right are equally problematic.
The far left and the far right are equally problematic. 110% yes. I would be all the way over agreeing as much as I possibly could. When you think about all the political drama that takes place, who are the loudest voices that take place? It's the political far left and the political far right. Meanwhile, the rest of us are stuck in the middle. Let's be honest. How many people out there have actually unfriended someone because of their political views? It doesn't happen as often as you think, because most rational people will put up with people who have moderately different takes than they do. For me personally, I am moderately right, okay? But to somebody on the further side of the left spectrum, I might as well just be in the Klan at this point, right? Because I obviously am a bigot and crazy and all this other crap that they try to associate anybody on the right with, when in the large majority of people on the conservative side are more moderately leaning right than they are to the left. Like Elon Musk is a good example of this. People call him a far right nut job, when in all reality, he used to be a liberal. They kind of forced him out. So yeah, 110% the problem that happens between right and left is the loudest voices on each side, and they just happen to be from the people who are all the way to one side or all the way to the other side. You don't ever hear from the people in the middle, and I think that's a huge problem.
3, 2, 1.
I'm not surprised to see Destiny go over to the strongly agree section, because 9 times out of 10, he fights with leftists who are just further left than he is, and that's why they all dislike him so much.
I've actually seen both sides. I'm a gay conservative, and I have seen the far right chastise me for my sexuality, and I've seen the far left chastise me for being conservative. I've had my own address put on the freeway here in Los Angeles because they feel that my voice should not be out there. So I see the two sides actively doing harm to those of us in the middle who have a really rational voice and want to express ourselves in a safe way.
I actually recognize this guy. He was on a Jubilee episode, Middle Ground, where it was gay conservatives versus gay liberals. And he was advocating for stopping young people from transitioning at an early age. And he got like absolutely crucified by the other side for even taking that stance whatsoever. So I can see why they would attack him, because that is a strong thing that really far left people fight for, is for kids to be able to transition, which I personally don't think that that's a good thing. You don't want kids who aren't ready to know who they're going to be. Like, I didn't even figure out who I wanted to be until I was in my 30s, all right? I'm in my mid-30s now, but in my early 30s, I had no idea who I wanted to be. So if you're going to sit here and tell me that a kid that's like 12 years old should have the power to make a decision for their life that will affect them for the rest of their life, then no, I just can't get behind that. I can't. And I applaud this guy. He did a great job on his Middle Ground episode. I highly recommend checking that one out.
I appreciate the anecdotal experience that you had. But I think my issue saying that liberals are more problematic. Like, I think everyone is.
What I talk about in my anecdotal incident is where I have never had a conservative physically attack me on the streets for what I am or who I am. They may verbally attack me. I've got that from the left too, but the left has physical attacks on my physical being out on the streets because I'm expressing myself.
I did a video called Why I Left the Left, and in that video, I break down when I started seeing Antifa constantly committing violent crimes against people who just didn't believe in the same things they did. When they preached that that's all they want to achieve with their message, then you can see that I 100% agree with what this guy's saying. He's saying that the left is far more violent than the right is. Yeah, I've seen the clips of people at Trump rallies getting punched in the face, and again, I would have to agree with that as well. I don't think that that is necessarily a good thing. I don't think violence against anybody who believes something different than you is warranted, unless it's like for someone who's like attracted to kids. All right, by all means, I feel like those people deserve what they have coming to them. But at the same time, I don't think that rioting and destroying property to try to make a point will ever be the right solution for anybody out there trying to do something to make change, or especially make positive change.
So I mean,
Multiple.
the opposite for myself. So like, you know, like experiences, as I said, anecdotal, like,
Right.
you know, like your experience, completely valid, but to say, oh, liberals are like, you know, worse.
Right.
Like,
Well, it's not that there's no one worse, which is why I didn't move to strongly agree. My anecdotal experience tells me that there is a group of people on both sides that will do active harm to someone who steps out of their expected narrative.
And again, this goes back to the far right, far left prompt that started in the beginning. The point comes down to this. Anybody who so strongly believes in their moral principles and that everybody else is wrong will most likely see themselves as a hero in their own mind when they engage in some kind of assault or harm on someone else because they have a different belief. And I don't care what your beliefs are, the minute you attack someone for that, you're wrong. You're just straight wrong, okay, boy?
I feel like for when we talk about political extremes, I think one, there is a lack of desire for bipartisanship. The second thing is this kind of like playful attachment to facts. People on the far left and the far right, whether we're talking about Israel-Palestine or vaccines, people seem to have like very fun activities in terms of just completely making stuff up regarding these two things. And then the third thing is the demonization of political opponents, where people on the far left and the far right engage in this idea that the people on the opposite side of the aisle, they're not just different or have different ideas, they actually hate the country, they want to destroy us.
Fucking preach, Destiny. That's what I'm talking about. This whole notion that has started where the other side is evil is what is killing us as a country. All right. It didn't just go from, no, you guys, your opinions are wrong and what you believe in is wrong. It got to, you are straight up evil. And that is how we ended up being in this absolute nightmare of a political situation that we're in. And I think it started with Donald Trump. You never saw people disowning lifelong family members when George Bush was president. It all started with Trump, and it was all propagated by the mainstream media to be able to have clicks and good stories to tell. Nothing gets people to tune in more than pissing them the hell off and getting them something to be angry about. Destiny is 110% right here. We need to stop demonizing each other. Do I think liberals are evil? No, I don't. But do I think that they've been misled? Yes, I do. And that's why I switched over to the right side. Do I think that conservatives have it all figured out? No, I don't. But do I think that right now, in my mind, that what's better for us moving forward is moderately right? Yeah, you best believe it. I do think that.
You know, people get labeled as extremists just for being even pretty centrist, based on our small conversation we've already had here. I don't think anyone here is extreme.
No.
But going down the street, you might get labeled, you know, crazy leftist or racist or.
I had to take his shirt off, for real.
It's interesting because when answering this prompt, I sort of hesitated. I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I used to be what I would characterize as a radical leftist. Now I'm sort of right of center. And I feel like I get characterized as a far-right extremist quite a bit. So I was thinking, what does far-right even mean? Because so many people who I deem to be reasonable are characterized as far-right, and I'm sure people on the left feel that very same way. I've gone and spoken to different campuses, both as a leftist and as a right-of-center individual, and I've never received more hatred or people trying to cancel my events than coming to those campuses as a conservative speaker.
First, I just want to say, damn, girl, you're rocking the hell out of that outfit. Yes, girl, yes. And secondly, I mean, obviously, she's 110% right, all right? It's happened to Jordan Peterson. It's happened to Ben Shapiro. Far left people seem to be way more willing to do extreme things to stop certain messages from getting out, far more than conservatives seem to be willing.
well, do you think that's because some of that rhetoric causes a lot of harm on the right side? Like a lot of like the things that are being said maybe in those talks like can have like lasting impacts on those students when you're on those campuses. So like, you know, and in the other way, like the conservative students might not like care as much about, you know, like, oh, like progress is being talked about. Like, you know, like I think like there's
Perfect example is Dylan
different-
Mulvaney just spoke at the University of Penn. They are free to go and have a talk. Conservatives didn't come out and try to cancel that event.
And I could argue that what Dylan Mulvaney has to say could be far more dangerous than what maybe Ben Shapiro would have to say. But again, it's all just a matter of perspective.
They didn't threaten staff. They didn't blockade the entrances. They let that event go on. Amala goes to speak, and there's rallies. They're pulling fire alarms. They're attacking the attendees. There is extremism.
I'm sure that there is, but I don't think Dylan Mulvaney is the right person to use for your example because of how much...
She's a leftist.
She's a leftist, but she's also had her life threatened on multiple occasions.
Right.
She's had to move around a lot because her address continuously is doxxed, and she wasn't even speaking at any sort of event. She was given a free Bud Light can, and her life was threatened.
I can understand what this girl's saying. I don't happen to agree with how she's saying it because what she's saying doesn't really seem to matter with what the message is that this conservative's trying to bring across. All he's trying to say is that Dylan Mulvaney can go harassment-free and give a speech on a campus, whereas Jordan Peterson will be attacked, and anybody who goes into the speech will also be attacked by students or anybody else who might have an agenda to stop that. And she ended up going back to the Bud Light example. Guess what she's trying to say is that Dylan Mulvaney's been threatened. But listen, I mean, it doesn't matter what message you're trying to send. There's always going to be people that disagree with you. I mean, look at Mr. Beast. I used his example before. Probably one of the least controversial people on YouTube, and there's people out there who absolutely hate him. So it doesn't matter what your message is. There's always going to be people who threaten you. But what this man's trying to say is that when you are a conservative and you're going to speak, you are much more likely to be harassed than if you were a liberal and you were going to speak. Echo chambers are real, people. They exist. And if you don't get that echo back, some people are going to get pretty angry about that because then they have to do some self-reflection about whether or not they're right. And people like remembering that they're right.
I think something that's really important to keep in mind, given the entirety of the show actually, is when we talk about like canceling or attacking people, the reality is if you have the power to do it, you will do it. And on college campuses, the prevailing thought right now is generally progressivism. So if they can cancel or if they can bully conservative speakers off campus, they'll do that. But then right now, because conservatives don't have power on college campuses or in some forms of media, they'll say, well, the left is pro-cancel culture. No offense to conservatives. You don't get credit for saying, well, we didn't try to cancel somebody on college campus. Yeah, that's because there's like 10 of you. You couldn't do it even if you wanted to, right? Like, obviously you're not doing it, right?
I think there's way more conservative students than I think people actually give credit to, but maybe they feel like they need to, harbor those beliefs internally rather than, espouse them out loud. And I will say, any conservative who wants to shut down an event or a speech, I would wholly disagree with.
110%. They're both right here, okay? The majority of students in university are most likely liberal, but there are conservative students in university. And just like Amala said, most of them don't speak up because they don't want to be accused of being a fascist or being a bigot, because that is what the mainstream media has painted these people as. And it's just easier to go about your day not speaking about what you believe in because it's just going to end up making your day harder. And these people already got tests they got to do, exams, finals. Pretty sure those are all the same thing. But anyway, you know what I'm saying, all right? They got work they got to do, all right? Don't judge me, okay? I'm over here trying my best to make sense of all this nonsense. So it's just easier for them to be quiet. But nobody would go and preach on these campuses if there wasn't people there to watch them. Of course, there's always infiltrators that'll come in and try to disturb the event, but there's clearly a market and an audience for these speakers to go and be listened to, or else they wouldn't do it.
There should not be limitations on free speech.
This reminds me of a quote I've heard often from the conservative side, and that is, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will die for your right to say it. There's always going to be people out there who have negative things to say, and it's up to you as an individual to decide who you let have that effect on you and who you realize is just broken. Now, I gotta say, I didn't really like all the anti-Semitic stuff that was being said on campuses during the pro-Palestine protests that were taking place everywhere. But as an American, it is our job to be able to allow people to lift their voice up and be heard, even if that message may be wrong, even if that message may be cruel, even if that message may be wrong, because that is what makes our society work. And that's what separates us from countries like China, where nobody has a say in anything.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, I hate this prompt. Because we all agree that like direct calls to violence are not acceptable, I imagine.
Right.
We all agree like you can't scream fire in a theater. Otherwise, I think that like there should be Nazis on college campuses, like doing their ideology. You should be allowed to say basically whatever rhetoric you want, as long as it's not like violating the terms of service of a platform. I do agree that vaccine misinformation is harmful. I do agree that misinformation relating to conspiracy theories is harmful, but I don't think the proper way to go about addressing that is to lock it all down and to ban it. I like the steps that YouTube has taken where they might put a note under the video, or what Twitter, or the social media platform formerly known as Twitter.
Elon Musk, can we just go back to calling it goddamn Twitter? All right, nobody knows what X is. All right, if I tell you someone, hey, I was on X today, 2 more X's and they think I'm watching porn. Like, let's stop this already. Twitter, it's Twitter, god damn it.
Called X is taking, where they have like the community note system.
I was thinking the very same thing as you. Of course, there are certain things that you cannot do, even with free speech being present. And I'm not sure how you define hate speech. So with some of the hate speech laws that are coming about, I think those need to be reevaluated and maybe rolled back, because even people who we disagree with or we don't like or we view as evil should still be able to espouse their beliefs.
Ooh, I love this from her so much because, listen, what you might think is hate speech might not be hate speech to me. So per person, this changes. And we can't have people dictating what is hate and what isn't hate. As sensitive as a society as we have today, hate means something different for everybody involved. Like, take, for instance, I have this running joke that I call my daughter a midget because she's small and she looks just like me and she's shorter than me. If I'm out in public and I'm like, come on, midget, let's go, and there's a small person around, I don't think that I should be accused of having hate speech because it's a derogatory term towards a small person, when in reality, I'm just having a little inner joke with my daughter. You see how that could be misconstrued and abused? Just something to think about.
Right. For example, right now, what's going on with students on campus, I don't agree that Congress and other individuals should limit what students are talking about on campus, what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in Israel, with the crackdown on JVP, the crackdown on Students for Justice for Palestine. The people who are in power should understand that students are the most, I would say, abrasive when it comes to speaking out against injustices.
See, now this is where it gets tricky, because whereas I don't think it's okay for people to call for the eradication of Jews in Israel, at the same time, I understand the right to protest. So I guess maybe we decide on a case-by-case basis. Like, it's so hard to enforce this. So you either have to say, to take an idea from iDubbbz, either all of it's okay or none of it's okay. I miss the old iDubbbz.
I'm a free speech absolutist. I think that there should be repercussions to certain free speech, but it's a constitutional right, and yeah, that's where I stand with it. Yeah, I don't want any apps being banned. Right. I don't want people being banned from certain apps, and I think there's an attack on our First Amendment right now, yeah.
All right, I'm with this guy. All right, let's just make it all okay, all right? You can say whatever you want, but if you catch a beating because you said something dumb, don't blame it on me. But yeah, I agree. I don't feel like you should censor anybody, like Ben Shapiro or anybody, just because their ideas may be considered dangerous to other people. I've changed my mind!
So you think no one should be banned from platform?
Absolutely not.
So like, someone calls me like the F slur, you like, leave them?
Yeah.
Why?
I get called that
Because
all
that's
the
their
time.
right to say that. Now, you can, there should be measures taken where, like I said, there are repercussions to certain speech. I don't think the platform should be able to remove them, but I think you should have the right to block them like we already can now, because I've lost 3 Instagram profiles just for saying, oh, I don't think children should have sex changes under the age of 18.
And that just goes back to reinforcing what I said, okay? You can say it, but don't be surprised if the reaction to what you say causes harm for you. There's repercussions to what you say, so watch your mouth, all right?
Accounts gone. Like, I've lost thousands of followers and stuff for just saying things that I think are just common
I do have a
sense,
question for you, actually.
Yeah.
Because I can understand why, like, hearing a word like that is harmful, and it's not something that you want to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather know who's homophobic, though? Wouldn't you rather know who's racist?
Yeah.
Exactly. Amala is so on point here, okay? Why would you want to hide people's true self? Wouldn't you rather know that your neighbor's someone who's a threat to you? Or would you rather know that, the person that you work with is an absolute bigot? Like, why would we want to hide these people? Because we need to be able to know who to stay away from and who to engage. And, like, who's on our side and who is against us. Amala's, again, just so based. She's so based, bro.
These platforms have the right, as private businesses, to say what they want on those businesses. It's not cancel culture for them to take down slurs. And honestly, they're not that great at taking down slurs anyway. Because I get called a on a daily basis online just for being a Jewish person.
The unfortunate thing is this internet and social media has become the town square. And the town square, if you were to take a box and put it in the town square, there is no limit on what you can say. And who's to say the city's going to come down and say, you use the word and we're going to take your soapbox and you can't ever come back to my city? That's exactly what you're doing when you're saying the platform has every right to remove this language.
Another solid point here, okay? How are we supposed to have discourse between one another if we're both separated? I think that's just going to create an environment of absolute craziness. If all the conservatives were on one platform and all the liberals were on another platform, then all you're going to do is slowly breed more and more culture where nobody has any kind of compassion or empathy for what anybody else thinks. And you're going to end up creating an overflow of just idealism that is going to be chaotic towards one another. Do you understand what I'm saying? If Twitter was nothing but liberals and say Parler was nothing but conservatives, there's going to be no one there to challenge their beliefs. And it's going to end up being catastrophic and bad for everybody involved. That's why if we keep discourse and we realize, hey, not everybody believes what I say, let me hear what they have to say, then you're creating an environment that's much more stable, much more approachable to one another. Not everybody is supposed to go through life feeling like they're 100% right all the time. I'm sorry to break the news to you, but that's the facts.
You have the option to go to another platform. There's plenty of
So we have an option to go to another city then.
There's plenty of conservative platforms
Now you have no free speech.
You have free speech because you have so many options.
I'll tell you why I disagree with what she's saying, all right? On YouTube, I have a much grander audience than if I were to go on Rumble exclusively, all right? Now, I understand that YouTube has TOS, and I have to abide by those rules. And frankly, I'm not that crazy that I have to really worry about YouTube TOS. I feel like I have a lot of even-headed takes, and I'm not going to say anything that's going to really get me in trouble, because for the most part, I really do like people. And honestly, I want to see people do well. But if I were to go over and try and create something on Rumble where they have half of the amount of people that I can get my message out to on YouTube, then that's not the same thing. So I disagree with her now. Yeah, you have options, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get the same effect going to a different platform.
I think we have to be really careful when we talk about the concept of free speech. I like the concept of free speech, and I would defend that across multiple platforms, but that's fundamentally different than the First Amendment. The First Amendment has nothing to do with like the concept of free speech. Right. The First Amendment prohibits Congress or state or local governments from making laws specifically abridging your right to freedom of speech. Like hate speech laws don't exist in the United States because there's not hate speech. Hate can be an aggravator to an existing crime, but we don't outlaw certain types of speech. Twitter does not have a legal obligation. It's a violation of their First Amendment right to say they have to host whatever type of speech or tweet that somebody has on the platform.
And I understand what Destiny's saying here. He's saying that free speech is designed so that the government can't prosecute you for what you say, which is a good thing, and that it doesn't cross over to companies like YouTube. However, with the evolving landscape of how YouTube and social media and other social media sites and platforms are used, it's the same thing. Most people don't even need to leave their house now to reach millions of people. And even though my soapbox is this camera and this microphone, the original law was designed so that someone could stand on that box and preach out in the town square. We don't really have that anymore in civilization because, you know, we have internet. So maybe we just evolve the rules of free speech.
Hate crime and a hate incident are two different things too. And I wanted to say, like, if somebody called you, you know, the F word, and then they said they wanted to kill you, then that's a hate crime. Bingo. And that's not protected, right? Correct. But a hate incident, somebody could call you an F word and not say they want to kill you, and that's still protected.
Exactly. It can be an aggravating circumstance to an existing crime, but you can call somebody whatever you want, and it's not,
I often criticize my own political party.
Yeah. I absolutely do. All right. I would much rather prefer Ron DeSantis than Donald Trump. Please don't crucify me for saying that. I just feel like Ron DeSantis is a very, very strong candidate, and the man backs up everything he says. So I think if I love my country and I want to see it do as well as it could do, then I think that DeSantis deserves my vote. I don't think that what Trump's doing, where he's attacking everybody else who ever goes against him, is conductive to our mission here that we're trying to achieve. And I also think that conservatives should be much more outreaching towards people of other minorities. I mean, if you look at this panel of conservatives, there's only one person who I'd consider even close to being like a normal white guy, and that's the guy in the hat who doesn't say a whole lot. We have a gay conservative. We have two black people who are conservatives. I think Amala's mixed, actually. Clearly, there needs to be more of an outreach within the conservative party to reach these people and to be like, listen, we are not your enemies. I know that MSNBC and CNN would have you believe that we want you guys to have the worst life possible, but that is just simply not the case. I would like to see the conservatives do that. I feel like a lot of the people that they've put up as politicians are not strong candidates, and I think they could find so much better. I'd like to see conservatives get younger. So yeah, of course, I have no problem criticizing my party.
3, 2, 1.
I'm not shocked to see Destiny where he is because he's made a career out of calling out his own party.
I see that you're on the disagree side.
I am.
Like,
I'm sitting here listening.
what brought you there?
What brought me here is because I tend to be a more, I guess you could say, traditional conservative in that I don't like to speak ill of my own party. I just don't. For me to go out and air their dirty laundry out where everyone can see it is only going to put a blemish on them. And I always want to put my best foot forward, and I always want to put my party's best foot forward. But I will point out the instances where I disagree with them privately so that they can make the necessary changes.
I see what this guy's saying, but I think it's so important to hold your party accountable because if they stand up for what you believe in, then you need to make sure that they're standing up for what you believe in and not just patting their own pockets.
I've got to ask, I'm so sorry, because you said you were a Trump supporter, right?
Yes.
This must be like the thing you hate the most about him, then, right? Because isn't Trump like the most anti-Republican attacks
But
his
here's
own
the
party?
thing, I come from a community where we found our power in local government. I've separated myself from this idea that I'm going to speak poorly about Trump because I want him to put his best foot forward.
Destiny's 100% right here. Donald Trump, never has there been a politician who has made more enemies than him within the own party of conservatism. And whereas the supporters love watching him do this, as a Republican and a traditional person, like this guy says, I believe in tradition, I don't think that that's helpful to our party whatsoever.
I wish more liberals did that, to be honest. I think a lot of liberals, we tend to bash our party on the social media platforms or when we protest a lot, right?
To be fair, there's a lot to bash, though. I mean, most of the liberals I've seen never take accountability for their party's faults. Because frankly, I just think they're too afraid of being kicked out of the group. I will say that I do think it's getting better with people like Destiny and people like Bill Maher speaking up and being like, what the hell are you guys doing? I think it's getting better. So there's hope for you guys.
But I think when it comes to going to these city council meetings, going to Congress, writing our elected officials, we tend to fall back on that, and we rely on social media, and we rely on demonstrations.
There is a lot of infighting on the right that I think makes us look very bad. One thing about liberals, you guys really do stick together, and you actually get work done, even when I don't agree with it. Whereas the right, with people like us, I feel like they see gay Republicans or conservatives as useful idiots, to be honest. That's why I kind of take issue with saying that I'm a gay conservative or gay Republican. They don't try to cast a wide net to bring new people over, whereas liberals do.
Really? Because I thought you got your liberal license taken if you didn't agree with every single thing they said. So I don't agree with him. I do agree, though, there needs to be more outreach to make people like him and other gay conservatives feel more welcome. I mean, one of my favorite conservative speakers is Dave Rubin. He's a gay man. And me being a cis white guy might not be considered someone who would look to him for political knowledge, but I think that he just is a really smart guy who has a lot of really great takes on things. But at the same time, I think that the liberals are more about finger pointing than they are about, come on in, join our party.
From my perspective as a liberal, I sometimes see y'all sticking really hard together. And y'all are like, no matter what, we're gonna vote red. Like, y'all seem very unified, even though you're talking about like public, like there's like internal discourse. But like, I feel like liberals feel like there's a lot of internal discourse amongst us. We're always yelling at each other.
Destiny's like, what are you talking about? I never scream at my own liberal friends. It's like 90% of his channel is just yelling at other leftists.
Well, that's interesting because Democrats, they're winning a lot more elections right now. You know, and that's another critique I have of the Republican Party. You know, the midterm elections, they completely blew it. They put out a lot of bad candidates. The left didn't do that. They put a lot
policies. It's like the right stays stuck on certain things, like abortion. It's like they're unbudging with that, and it's like, all right, if we're pro-life, let's be pro-life in and outside the womb. You know, because they only focus on abortion. Well, what about war? Because now they want to send everybody over to Israel. So I'm like.
I do really like what he said there. I do think that a lot of times conservatives get really hung up on pro-life and they're willing to die on that hill when really there's so many other things that are better talking points for us, like crime and border control. Those are agendas we really need to push, yet we always get caught in this trap of anti-abortion stuff, and I think that that kills our party in the long run because I feel like most people are pro-abortion. And I mean, you can be pro-life, just know which talking points are stronger to use than others. And I mean, you can be pro-life, just know which talking points are stronger to use than others.
Violence should never be the answer to any issue.
Violence should never be the answer to any issue. I mean, I guess this depends, right? If someone is directly endangering you and your family, I think the best way to respond is with violence, pure violence. Because if there's one thing that conservatives treasure more than anything else, it's their safety. And they will respond in a hostile manner if you threaten them. So if you are in direct danger, I think that you have every right to use violence, but I do not think that you should have the right to proactively enact violence on someone else when you're not being directly threatened. That's pretty much where I stand. If you are in a threatening situation, violence is a very fair option. But even like Andrew Tate says, violence should be a last resort. Real men know when to fight and know when to not fight.
3, 2, 1.
Violence, assuming we have a functioning democracy, I think violence is bad for two huge reasons. One is because we don't want to condition people to feel like violence is the answer to political disagreements. And then two, we want everybody to be able to utilize some form of protest against the government. And when we endorse violence, we're now saying it's okay for even people we disagree with to use violence, and that could be really scary for a lot of different reasons. But I would say in general, in 99%, where we're at today in the United States, we are not at the level of where violence is necessary to enact any kind of political change.
Yeah, honestly, I have no disagreements there. I think everything you said is spot on. I can't argue with that. You can't use violence on someone just because you disagree with them.
I wouldn't say that's entirely true. I mean, there's a certain level of violence happening to marginalized communities.
I would love for her to give some examples of this. I know Jubilee's trying to push this new show, but I really feel like this would have been a much better middle ground episode than whatever this is.
That doesn't mean I necessarily agree with violence when it comes to the Palestinian rebellion that's been happening in Israel. I don't agree with Hamas killing people, that's terrorism, but at the same time, the violent uprisings that have happened, most of which have actually been peaceful, but still there is some sort of violence happening because they've been oppressed for so long. Back in the Holocaust, people think that, Jews went peacefully into the concentration camps. No, we were violent. We had uprisings, we fought back. At a certain point, there is violence in fighting back to oppression.
Yeah, I mean, of course, America had the Revolutionary War when we fought the British to take our country for ourselves, and that was due to the oppression that we were feeling from the British people. So it's not like Americans don't understand what that is. We're all taught that in schools all the time. As far as the Palestinian, Israeli stuff, I'm not touching it. All right, I'm not touching it. I don't like what Hamas did. I understand that Israel's between a rock and a hard place. Nothing either side does unless Palestine comes up and says, hey, we'll keep the Gaza Strip, we'll leave you guys alone. Short of that, I don't know how you solve this issue. And I'm sure if you could, they would have done it already.
I put agree because I don't strongly agree with it because I'm all about nonviolence in my life. What I practice, my spirituality, I'm all about nonviolence. But at the same time, as I organize and I'm on the ground and I'm at protests and I'm at demonstrations, by any means necessary means, right, quoting Malcolm X, that you have to have some form of disagreement with the state that's not listening to your needs as people, as free people. And sometimes that takes, rebellious actions like burning down banks or burning down institutions that are not listening to you. But as Black people in America, if we're only demanding liberty and justice, we're not asking for revenge. We're just asking for equality. And sometimes I think the state looks at us being resistant as violence.
Listen, I mean, clearly I'm a white guy, right? I can't begin to act like I know the plight of the brothers and sisters out there. But what I can say is that burning down banks and destroying local businesses, looting stores for shoes, looting grocery stores, bum rushing local businesses and stealing a bunch of stuff is not a way to get what you want. I mean, that's just a way to destroy lives of people who have absolutely nothing to do with what you're involved in. And that's my particular take on that.
Sure, yeah, the reason I came over here, I was thinking more internationally. If a country is met with violence, there's really only one way to respond to that. I don't think Israel could go to Hamas and say, hey guys, can you just not do that again? When Hamas is already saying that they plan more attacks that they had on October 7th. So I think Israel has the right to defend themselves with violence.
Like I said, again, Israel's between a rock and a hard place. Nothing they do is going to make them look good, but they do deserve the right to defend themselves from attacks from a foreign threat. It's just as simple as that.
Sure, I think so there's a couple of key things to keep in mind here. So one is, when we talk about like violence in response to political ideas, we have to be really careful that we don't redefine violence to mean literally anything that we don't like. Because I've noticed that like people are doing these things where like there is a white supremacist violence against black communities because of the way money is distributed with our taxes. And people will take that very academic form of violence, which is, and it's okay, I think, to have this analysis, but they'll take that academic form of violence and they'll say, now we can kill police officers and burn down buildings, or now we can engage in arson or destroy neighborhoods.
What can I say? Based.
My side is misrepresented by the media.
Gee, let me think about this one. Hell yeah. How many channels are there that are anti-conservative and how many channels are there pro-conservative? One that I can think of that's pro-conservative, and I'm not counting the Daily Wire because that's like a social media entity. I'm thinking of Fox News. I'm thinking of MSNBC. I'm thinking of CNN, those big major corporations. Even ABC, who claims to be impartial, always paint conservatives in a bad light. They just do it a little more cunningly than MSNBC and CNN. But all of this hatred towards conservatives has originated from one place and one place only, and that is the mainstream media. And you can't sit there and tell me that they don't make the conservatives look absolutely horrible to the rest of the world because they're trying to help paint the narrative that conservatives are bad people. I want you guys to think in your head real quick. Why would corporations that are super rich want to endorse a party that is more based in socialism than a party that is for people working hard and getting more wealth? Could it be because they already have the power, and if they're able to suppress people from growing and getting more power with hard work and dedication, that maybe they won't lose that power that they already have? Just something to think about. That's all I'm saying. All right.
3, 2, 1.
Honestly, the media is controlled by the left. I really never see any positive light shine on conservatives nor the right in the media ever, unless it's right-leaning media.
And to your point, what I think is really interesting to even just look at the conservatives who are here today, it's a pretty diverse bunch of people. And when I was on the left, my characterization of conservatives was like white, heterosexual, old man, and to having moved over to that space and see, oh, there's way more people who just happen to have conservative beliefs, or maybe they don't agree with some of the woke stuff that's happening right now. I think we are often mischaracterized.
Exactly. Look at the people that are on the conservative side, all right? A gay black man. You have Amala, half white, half black, a female. You have Mario, a gay Latino-looking man. I don't know if he's Latino or not, but that's kind of what I'm taking off of my first guess. And then, of course, you have like the traditional country-looking fella. So for anybody out there who thinks the conservatives are nothing but cis old white men, take a look at this panel and tell me again that conservatives are nothing but old white men. You can't, because it's not.
I do agree that right now, ironically, it seems like the left and the farther left have more kind of corporate media control in terms of how images are displayed. So you're going to feel like if you're a conservative that you're not accurately represented, and the left maybe gets some more fair representation. But on platforms where conservatives run things, holy Christ, are people on the left completely and totally misrepresented. Like, how many times have I heard these stupid quotes from the WEF where it's like, oh, you want us to rent everything and own nothing, and you want us to eat bugs, and you're on your 57th booster shot. Today, if anybody's ever listened to Rush Limbaugh, Michael Savage, Billy Cunningham, like any of these people, these guys are not giving fair, accurate representation of the left. Their voices just tend to be more marginalized or smaller now in media because of how much corporate control kind of like bows to the woke agenda, I would say. Yeah.
I have to agree with Destiny here. I do believe that a lot of people associate like left people with like super wokeness and overly sensitive, hyperalized sexuality. But with the progression of people like Bill Maher and people like Destiny being able to get a louder voice, I think that narrative's changing a bit. But they're a lot more traditional liberals than, say, like the modern progressive liberal. And again, I just want to point out, like, I don't have any problems with any liberals. I feel like they have fallen victim to what they're being told by their leaders and not necessarily bad folks. But again, my goal here is to make sure you guys understand that conservative people are not evil. They're just people who believe in tradition and old-fashioned values.
To push back on that just a little bit, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but when it comes to right-wing media, maybe platforms like the Daily Wire or PragerU, they're very open about the fact that they're conservative. A lot of the mainstream left news, they'll present their opinion as fact. But like someone like Ben Shapiro, he'll tell everyone, listen to my show, listen to Pod Save America, figure out what you think is right, listen to and you could figure out the facts based on what we're both saying. You don't see that as much from the left.
I love what this guy says here because he's basically saying that the media is trying to portray themselves as though they're impartial, but then they paint conservatives in a bad light, as where a lot of conservative media says, hey, we're conservative, we're just letting you know, but here are the facts, you decide for yourself. And much more of a manipulation tactic from the mainstream media, who are telling people, hey, we're bringing you the news, we're bringing you the truth. We don't play sides. Conservatives are bad. It's snake shit.
I want to push back on that because Ben Shapiro has stated a lot of opinions as facts.
Yeah.
I don't think
Well, sure.
I think that there are better examples to use within the Conservative Party that are more open about being opinionated, but Ben Shapiro is not.
Yeah, or Michael Knowles saying transgenderism should just be eradicated from society. It's like, so now y'all are really giving them a bullet to use against us.
It's the culture war bullshit.
Yeah,
Like,
it's culture war
it's
bullshit,
just
yeah.
like that's what I'm so sick of between both sides, because I do think that both sides are misrepresented within media.
They went way too hard with the Bud Light
just-
thing. I'm
it's
like, let's
exhausting.
let it go.
Especially on this topic now, I think in 2020 we all can agree every news station, besides most conservative news stations and podcasts, were posting black squares and saying that they were black people. But now, you know, what's going on with Israel and Hamas, you see some media companies taking the silent side or firing correspondents on CNN like Mark Lamont Hill, or firing other people on MSNBC if they have a neutral stance. So I agree with you. I think it's a cultural war on both ends, right? You have some liberal apparatuses who don't agree with some things that some liberals say.
Same with the right and how they did Tucker Carlson.
Both liberal and conservative media, even if they say they're blatantly stating facts, they're failing to contextualize those facts, because a story presented with blank facts looks very different when you actually hear like the build up and like really see what's going on underneath.
Yeah, I don't think Ben Shapiro is who this girl says she is. I think Ben Shapiro does say things very passionately, and he says them with such confidence that a lot of people can construe it as facts. But I think for the most part, Ben Shapiro does a lot of research, and I don't ever see him losing debates. I don't know where she's getting this. I think Ben Shapiro is so ego-driven that he would not allow himself to be painted in a corner by giving wrong information. That's just me. That's my personal thing. So I think everything that he tells you is something he truly believes is fact.
Mainstream media tends to misrepresent conservatives. We all can agree on that. But what they do very well is they misrepresent liberals in a positive light. We can all remember the news anchor going, it's a mostly peaceful rally, and there's a building burning behind him. They've misrepresented the other side, saying, look, this side is all sunshine and rainbows, everything's fine, pay no attention to those people being hurt in the back. And instead of actually elevating people who were advocating for peace and saying, please don't destroy these buildings, they focused on the destruction and everything else, but not the actual destruction. So I see both sides being completely misrepresentative, but misrepresented in different ways. The right being ignored and cast out as crazy, and the left going, we're the shiny example of tolerance. Look at us. When underneath the surface, we see the truth.
Yeah, the left is not tolerant whatsoever. They always say, accept people for who they are unless you say something they don't like, and then you're completely screwed. And they will make sure that they let you know how horrible they think you are. So we all know that that's not the truth. And he's right. During the media coverage, during the BLM, they'd always focus on the really peaceful parts of the protest, and they would ignore the parts where everything was burning. They'd ignore the looting. They'd ignore the rioting. Now, I'm not saying that was the majority of BLM. I'm sure there was a lot of opportunists that came in and took advantage of what was going on. But again, the media is very cherry-picky about what they show, and he's right about that.
The American dream is still alive.
Hell yeah, the American dream is still alive. Anybody who works really hard in this world can get whatever they want. Now, do you need some luck and a little bit of talent along the way? Sure. But anybody who gets to the grind and does what they need to do can succeed in this country. And that, in my heart, is what the American dream is. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
3, 2, 1.
I feel like when upward class mobility is so hard as it is right now, the American dream is it's either dead or it's on life support, because it's just damn near impossible for people to climb out of poverty. Everyone thinks that they're going to be the next Jeff Bezos, you're closer to being on Skid Row than you're ever going to be to Jeff Bezos.
I think the American dream has become the American memory. Like I was thinking about this just outside of politics. Like, you know how a lot of people have nostalgia for like the past and stuff. It made me look at America and it's like, we're not gonna get back the America that we were post 9/11 when everybody was a little more unified outside of the Patriot Act and everything.
Did anybody check to see if this guy's actually conservative? Because that's a liberal talking point and a really bad one. The patriarchy is bullcrap. Even Amala looks at him like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro?
We're not going to get the America where all races could get along without people saying, oh, you're culturally appropriating, you're microaggressions, all that little stuff that keeps us divided. I don't think we'll get back to the America that we grew up in. I honestly don't. Like, I want to be optimistic, but it's hard.
I guess I just don't know that that's the necessary point of the American dream. I think it shifts and it changes and it takes on the context of the time that it's in, where we had that sort of old school nuclear family, house with the white picket fence. That's changing with technology and corporations buying up properties and things like that. But I don't think the American dream is dead. I think it's taking on a new form. I think still there is no better place to be, no better place for progress. And as you watch people in other countries, what are they influenced by? They're influenced by America. Where do they want to be? They want to be in America. So it speaks to me that the dream is very much still alive. Opportunity is very much still alive. It just looks different.
Almost 100% right. Me sitting here talking to you watching this is me chasing the American dream of trying to become a content creator. Nothing is stopping me from being able to do this. Nothing's stopping you from watching this and being able to do this yourself. All you got to do is get a camera. You don't even need a setup like I have. You can just have a phone and talk into that and tell people what you think. And if people like what you think, they will watch more of you. The fact that we can do that without having barriers or things stopping us from being able to do that is proof to me that the American dream is still alive. Yeah, Amala's right. It looks different, all right? Somebody might look at the American dream as just having your own apartment, right? Getting out of your parents' house. The American dream is different for everybody. It's not one broad brush.
Dream or the idea?
The dream.
The dream.
dream.
I agree strongly with what you're saying here. That dream of being able to buy a house, having the nuclear family, being happy, that's still my view of the American dream. It is harder to attain, that's for sure. It might be dead here in California.
New York.
It's not, I can assure you.
I want to believe that the American dream can be like real. The more I've experienced life, the more I feel it is a little more on the dead side. Like, it's like this idea that we're taught when we're growing up is that you work the hardest, you're gonna get the most, right? But that's just not true. And that's not the world we live in. And I know it's a little pessimistic. As I said, I want to be like the poverty cycle breaker in my family, but it's like, it feels next to impossible.
I gotta say, the American dream is not easy to attain, but it is attainable. I think after COVID, a lot changed, and a lot of people started realizing how easy it was to get money from the government and be able to just hang back and chill. And I think that really damaged a lot of us. If you see so many help wanted signs on local businesses around you, nobody's willing to go work at the low-end paying jobs, which is why I think that they're okay with letting so many immigrants in. That's a story for a different day. The American dream is all about motivation, going after what you want without hurting anybody along the way.
Feel out of reach, but I started my adult life with $35 in my pocket, and I was a runaway because my parents locked me up. I saw them achieve the American dream of having a home and having beautiful children. I wanted that, and I worked hard. And now in my work in real estate, I see people achieving the American dream all day long. Sometimes California is a little outside of our price range. We got to go to another state. But that potential, that idea that I am free to choose to get a home, choose to get land, choose to start a business, that is still here. And I wholeheartedly believe that the American dream still rests in our hands. We just have to be strong enough to take it.
I freaking love that. I love this guy. I mean, I'm not like in love with him, but I love what he says, okay? I'm engaged to a beautiful woman to be married one day. But yeah, I just wanted to clear that up.
I think for individuals who immigrate to America, the American dream may still be alive and embedded within their spirit. But I think for BIPOC folk that are within America, the American dream is sort of a memory, and it's becoming less vibrant due to the housing crisis, due to, like you said earlier, gentrification, due to the lack of education. When the American dream was first, promoted within the 1960s, Reagan, Nixon, they funneled so much money within the American economy for people to go to college and not worry about it, for people to afford a home and not worry about it, for people to get a car and not worry about it.
Be able to work a minimum wage job and support a family.
Thank you. But now, since there's so many instances of people on the top, making sure they hold that wealth, we see so many BIPOC folk in America suffering and not being able to get to that middle class, right? The American middle class is no longer here.
So you're speaking just from the BIPOC perspective, not American.
I'm speaking just from the BIPOC perspective.
Isn't like the American dream supposed to apply to everyone? And I think that's the issue. It's like, when I heard you, I'm like, I think that's amazing that like some people do have the access to move and stuff like that. But like, what do you say for those people at the bottom who are working so hard and they can't?
I know I've said this in previous videos, but for anybody who's new to my channel and you're watching me for the first time, I just want to let you know, I don't do YouTube full time, okay? I work 2 other jobs to try to support my family. I work a full-time job and I work a part-time job. And then in my free time, I try to make YouTube. One day I'd love to make YouTube my main job, but unfortunately, like, you don't make a lot of money off of YouTube in the beginning. I'm responsible for my fiance and I'm responsible for my daughter. I have to make sure they have a roof over their head and they're fed constantly. And I can't do that with just one job. I agree with these guys. You do not make crap at most jobs these days. Not enough to live off of. Many people have to have 2 jobs just to get by. I'm working 3. At one point, I was working 4 jobs. I was working at Target, I was working at my main job, and I was working at my second job, and then I was trying to do YouTube. So it's all about motivation and staying consistent and trying to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Unfortunately, nobody's going to come and save you. I have bigger dreams for myself, and I hope that you watching do as well have bigger dreams for yourself, because they're out there. You just have to go get them. You have to try to achieve them, and the universe sometimes will answer you back.
Like
I feel like a lot of the views you have of the American dream get so politically tainted that one of the things that sucks is for the cool things that are happening in America, you can't even take credit for it anymore. I hate that I chose like the most politically divisive topics, but like, for instance, like I personally think the COVID vaccine, that was a huge success of United States innovation and capitalism. I think our guns are really cool. I think that's like super awesome. You can shoot awesome firearms in the United States. I'm a proud gun owner from Nebraska. It seems like for all the things that exist that are good, we can't take credit for them anymore because all of them become so heavily politically divided that we start to have this huge doomer outlook on everything.
I think it's really hard for some people to have that optimistic outlook when there is so much in the way. Like as a disabled person, we're still forgotten about with marriage equality. We're still forgotten about when it comes to health mandates. For a lot of people who live this every day, for us, the American dream is dead, and it's been dead for a while.
Geez, she's so positive, man. Like, she's really uplifting, and I'm sure she's so much fun to be around at parties.
I think like as a fun, the fact that we're all here and like clothed and fed and have water and we're here discussing ideas and like how to make this country a better place, to me that completely signifies the American dream. We are currently living it.
That's like, as you said, like a really optimistic view, like, oh, look how far we've come, but what if that's not enough for those people right now? Like, that sucks for the people living right now who don't have what they need.
That's the beauty of America. We are free to succeed or we are free to fail. It's free to do whatever you want.
I'd rather be here. I'll just say that. I'd rather be in America.
Right.
All right, guys, so let's break down everything we talked about today. All right, I do believe that liberals and conservatives have way more in common than we think we do, and we need to stop fighting. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Both of us want the same thing. We're just trying to go about it different ways, all right? We all want to get along. We all want to be proud of the country we live in. We all want to live comfortably, but we also want to do whatever the hell we want. All right, it's complicated, all right? Everybody's got different things that they want in this world. But the good thing is, if you live in America, and I'm sure there's a lot of other great countries like Europe, I believe you could probably do the European dream's probably something that's real too. It's all about going after what you want and trying hard to get it. Nobody's going to come into your life and hand you something and say, hey, congratulations, you're the next Moist Critical. All right, you got to earn it. Any YouTuber you see today with millions and millions of followers, they started at 0. All of them at some point started at 0. I'm only using YouTube as an example because that's what I'm trying to do right now. But you watching YouTube, maybe your dream is to become a teacher. You can go back to school, and in 5 years, you'll be starting your teaching job. Some people can't achieve the things they want, like a fighter pilot. If you have bad vision, you can't become that. But like, there's certain barriers that will stop people from getting what they want. If you can get your second goal or even your third goal, you can sit nicely. There's no reason why you can't achieve that. I will say that it is silly of me to think that everybody can achieve what they want, because frankly, that's just not the case. That's not how reality works. But if you outwork the person next to you, you might get it. Just think like that. Just outwork one person at a time around you, and you just may find yourself in a successful situation. I thought that this was a really fun conversation. Again, I wish it was a middle ground episode, because I really wanted to see Amala and Destiny get into it and talk about different stuff. But I really do feel like she's a conservative, he's a liberal. They're both like just a little off of center, but I also think that they have so much in common. They're almost like the same person, just different political affiliations. All right, so in the beginning of the video, I tell you who I thought won. Well, to be honest, they didn't really argue that much. There was pretty much everybody agreeing with each other, and then they all hugged each other at the end. So I would say I win and you win, because we had a good time getting through this. All right, I'm sorry. I know I wish I had something better to give you guys, but I don't. This was really kind of just an even-keeled, very civil conversation. It's hard to get like really crazy reactions from stuff like this. So I hope this video really opened your eyes up into just how conservatives and liberals are actually incredibly alike. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to see what made me go from becoming a liberal to a conservative, click this video right here.